I do remember drinking salt water. I do remember pirates coming on board. It's just these little faint memories that I have, and we spent a good year at the refugee camp to wait for our sponsorship, and luckily, we got out of there before things got worse.
Coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time.
Hello, Fremont. This is Alessandra, and you are listening to episode 78 of the Fremont Podcast.
Hey, Ricky. Happy birthday, man. I'm really grateful that I've gotten the chance to get to know you over the last year plus, and I'm looking forward to many, many more. Here's hoping that there are many happy returns, and again, just super happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday, Ricky. Have a good episode.
Happy birthday, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky. Happy birthday. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and working with you. You can hear how much you care about people and the city whenever you talk and in every episode of the podcast. You're a big piece in connecting Fremont to be a community of people and neighbors and not just strangers. Happy birthday!
Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
Tim Tran, I have heard your name quite a few times. How long have you been in Fremont?
Wow, I've been here since 2001, so it's been a while. Yeah.
Wow,
almost 22 years.
Wow, that's crazy. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so you are right now, like public facing, people know you as a real estate agent, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. How would you describe yourself?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background information about myself. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the invitation to be on this podcast.
I'm finding out more and more that it's my privilege to have you on the podcast here. It's always a privilege to have guests on here, but I'm excited about this conversation.
The feeling's mutual. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
A quick background of myself. I've been in Fremont since 2001.
Okay.
I lived across the country, grew up in Texas, lived across the country, and went to school in New York, and worked in D.C. for a little bit, and decided to come to the Bay Area. And I found Fremont to be pretty accessible, so I settled here. And with that in mind, I started a business here, and eventually got really connected to the community in terms of what we do. So that's a quick background of myself.
Was the business that you started when you first came out here, was it real estate or was it something else?
I was in techie, just like most people in Silicon Valley. My background is in systems engineering and then software engineering. And with the technical background that I possess, I decided to have a career change. And real estate, specifically commercial, was very analytical, very process-driven.
Nice.
So it was a pretty, I wouldn't say easy transaction, but it was logical.
Yeah, that's cool. So you said something I actually want to capture right before we go on too much, but you said when you looked at Fremont, it seemed like a great place to move to. And I'm kind of wondering at that time, because people listening to the podcast now, I mean, even if they just moved here, they see it as it is now. What was attractive to you about Fremont, 22 years ago?
There's a few things. Number one was the affordability aspect of it. Number two, I'm an avid runner. I've been running all my life, and I've completed a couple marathons. Wow. So having access to Lake Elizabeth was a big draw.
Yeah.
Having access to Mission Peak trails was a big draw. And of course, there's a lot of other benefits, such as transportation, the cost of housing, access to a lot of different restaurants and things to do was what made me decide to move here.
That's great. That's great. So you transitioned from the tech world into real estate, and you said it was a pretty easy transition, basically because of the analytics that go into that. Was there what else happened in your life, or what else led you to a point where you said real estate is the direction that you want to go with your life versus staying in the tech world? Yeah,
absolutely. So technology-wise, I was pretty comfortable, analytical, engineering-wise. What I learned a lot in becoming a very successful commercial real estate agent, you have to learn about people. You have to learn about marketing. You have to learn about the market. Those were the things that I never had any experience with, but I was willing to take a challenge. And how I learned and apply those skills to help our clients was I actually started out as an investor. So I bought my own investment properties.
Okay.
I learned how to negotiate. I learned how to manage them. I learned how to keep the books, if you will, and use those skill sets and help our clients succeed as well.
Okay. So you started out in the real estate world, not necessarily as an agent, but as an investor. And then you kind of just dabbled in that for a while?
Yeah, I started in real estate actually as an appraiser.
Okay.
I thought I wanted to be an appraiser, and I tried that for a few months. It wasn't my calling.
Yeah.
I also tried residential real estate before I got into commercial. Again, I felt like there was something that was misaligned. And when I learned about commercial real estate, I found that was really what I was built for. That was my true passion, right? Because of my analytical background.
Okay.
Being able to help clients based on my own personal experience as an investor.
Okay. That's cool. So if you don't mind me asking, I want to go back. You know, you said you came here from Texas. What was it like? Where did you grow up? And what was it like growing up wherever that was?
Well, I would say if you really, really want to go back.
Yeah.
I'm actually an immigrant to the country.
Okay.
I was born in Vietnam.
Okay.
And our family literally are boat people where one night, my parents came in and say, put these clothes on, we're leaving, we're escaping. And we got on this 300-foot fishing boat, and we traveled 3 days and 3 nights and had no idea where we were going. We ended up on a refugee island. So with that in mind, we sought for help and sponsorship, and the Baptist Church down in Dallas did the paperwork for us. So we ended up in Dallas by default because of that. And so I grew up in Dallas. I went to school there all the way to high school, and you know, along the way we became U.S. citizens. And when I graduated, I got a scholarship to go to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in New York. And so I took that by the horns and decided to leave Texas and went to New York. And afterwards, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and went home, drove all the way from New York to Texas, and lo and behold, I got an offer letter in the mail, and it says, hey, if you'd like to come to Washington, D.C. for a job, we got one for you. So off I go, packed everything I had in my car, and decided to go to Washington, D.C., and spent a good 5 years there. And so I went to a military school, and one of the things that I am obligated to do when I got out was to serve as a reservist. So my reserve duty was at Treasure Island. Wow. So they sent me out here to fulfill my obligations, and I just fell in love with the Bay Area.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. So, man, I'm still I'm still caught back as a kid escaping on a fishing boat. Like I just think that's. I mean, I'm looking at you now, and I'm just thinking, how that's just an amazing story to get from there to here. I mean, your parents live in Texas now, or they live out here?
My parents are still in Texas.
Okay.
There's 4 kids. There's 6 of us in the family, and I'd credit my parents for being the bravery that having that brave soul to get us out of there. My father, my dad sailed for the French flag, and he had some experience. Wasn't a whole lot, and him and a bunch of his friends got together and said, hey, we should buy this fishing boat and escape. And because of his experience of sailing under the French flag, they just made him captain by default.
Wow.
And he told me he had no idea where he was going, and he just knew that he needed to head a certain direction.
Wow.
And along the way, we ended up in a refugee island in the Philippines, of all places.
Wow.
And he steered that little fishing boat 3 days a night.
How many people were on that boat?
Gosh, I don't know, maybe 100, 150. I do remember a few folks didn't make it. I do remember, keep in mind, I was about 5, 6 years old at the time.
Sure, yeah.
I do remember drinking salt water. I do remember pirates coming on board. It's just these little faint memories that I have. And we spent a good year at the refugee camp to wait for our sponsorship, and luckily, we got out of there before things got worse.
Wow!
So it was, like I said, I was 5 or 6 at the time, so a lot of details just is what my father tells me.
Wow,
right?
That's crazy. So it's interesting. We live in an area where a lot of people come here for the American dream. Like they do want they have the hope of coming to Silicon Valley, investing in the community, and eventually making a better life for themselves. Many people, immigrants coming from other countries, wanting to make a better life for their families. So they either bring their families here or they send money back to their. Your situation is different, though. Like, you were fleeing something. I mean, I can't imagine that it was necessarily the American dream that brought your parents here. But I'm just wondering how that affects you differently. In other words, somebody who has the view of the American dream in mind that they want to go after, that drives them to do it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's some, people are wanting to do that, but you are somebody who you're just trying to save your life. And I'm just wondering, as you look back at your journey in your life, how have you been affected by your coming to the U.S. as a refugee versus coming to the U.S. as somebody pursuing a dream?
Yeah, I'll put it this way. I think as an immigrant to the country, and my dad used to talk about how, when he landed on U.S. soil, he had $20 in his pocket. He spent about half of that at the airport for ice cream. So we literally came to the U.S. without anything. We couldn't speak the language. We didn't have money. We basically had whatever clothes we had on our body. And so growing up, I don't know any better. I don't put a distinction between, hey, I'm here, I know the language, I'm privileged, my parents are wealthy. I just always worked hard. And I always like to think that, yes, the American dream is there, but you got to take actions, right? If you're just sitting here and the American dream is out there and you do nothing, then nothing is going to really come to you. You got to try hard. You got to educate yourself. You got to go out and get it. You got to go out and grab it.
Yeah. That's awesome. We'll be right back. You can hear the rest of this conversation in just a moment. Buying a home is a big decision. When I'm trying to make a big decision in my life, I turn to family. Jennifer at Petrocelli Homes in Niles treats everyone who walks through her door like family, always looking out for their best interests. When you choose Petrocelli Homes to help you buy or sell your home, you're choosing family. Contact Jennifer Petrocelli today and see for yourself why she's the right choice for your real estate needs. And now, back to our conversation. Man, that's awesome. So you were talking about thank you for sharing that, by the way. I know sometimes people look at their stories, and if they've had a past where maybe there's there's shame involved, or there's like just kind of an embarrassing element of that they're not willing to share it. I think it helps so much to be able to hear your story. And I think anybody listening to this is going to help know you better because of being able to share that part of your life. So
Thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah,
and by the way, I have friends that came here when they were about 19, 20. So they went through school in Vietnam. So they kind of knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
They knew why they were escaping. I didn't know any better. The life that I live and the life that I know has always been the U.S.
Yeah.
But I've always been a hard worker. Like I say, our family grew up very poor.
Yeah.
We grew up in a neighborhood where my father got robbed coming home from work because he worked the night shift just to make that extra, 25 cents.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to tell, when I grew up, I see these things. I always wanted to get out of that environment to do better, right? Which is why, for a lot of Asians, especially for me and my family, education is so important.
Wow.
Being educated, going out and do something with your life.
That's great.
Great question, though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. No, thanks for sharing. You said something after you kind of gave us the survey of your life, transitioning from the tech industry into real estate. You talked about being able to understand the human elements of the community or of real estate and that sort of thing. What was it? Was there anything particular that caused you to pay attention to that more? And then what was it that brought you from working in tech to now, helping people buy property or to establish themselves in a place that means something to them?
Yeah, so when I worked in tech, I was a systems engineer and a programmer. So I spent a lot of time in a cubicle.
Okay.
I rarely saw the sun, and I just did my own job. And And one day I decided I needed to go out and do something different, get out there more, right? And I felt like the missing piece was really talking to engaging with people. Sure, in tech and in software engineering, you're still engaging with your team, but that's just a small team that you're working with daily. Nothing wrong with that. I felt like, for me, I just was looking for something a little bit more different, more adventurous. So I decided to look into real estate. And it took me a while to find that commercial was really my calling. And it took a little bit of time to figure that out. I started as an appraiser. I started in residential. Neither of those were really something I was very passionate about. And when I found commercial real estate, because commercial is very analytical, right? We're always out there looking at a 5-year, cycle on what clients can do with their portfolio. And this is where the technical skills and the analytical skills came into play. So I felt very comfortable with that, right? And when I was working in tech, I'd made good money. So I invested in my own properties, and I learned from that. I got into some partnership agreements. I also bought my own properties and flipped it and sold it. So I figure, hey, I can use some of these skill sets and help my clients with that. And so I started on this journey about 22 years ago, and it's been the most rewarding, the most fun experience I've ever had. A lot of people think of being a commercial real estate agent as just finding the property, negotiating the deal, and okay, I'm done. But I look at that more of I look at it as more of a, we're solving people's problems, and we're providing solutions to them using commercial real estate.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because I'm gonna give you a little scenario in my life where I would almost have my experience is opposite of yours, but I feel like we have very similar reasons why we've done what we've done. So I'm gonna give you an example. So I was an electrician for 6 years. 90% of the work that I did was residential. And so I started doing electrical, and then in 2008, there was the recession, and my boss couldn't keep me working for him, so I started my own business doing electrical. But there was more money to be made in commercial or industrial electrical. But I love doing residential. And part of the reason I love doing residential is because I was making somebody's life a little better. In other words, if I go into a restaurant, if I go into a place where, people need new electrical, generally working with a supervisor or a manager, I'm not working with somebody's actual life. But when I have somebody that invites me into their house because they want recessed lights put in their kitchen, and they've always dreamed of having recessed lights in their kitchen, and I get done and I leave and they're like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. I didn't think it could look this good in here. I know that when I leave and they come home from work every day, their life's going to be a little bit better because of something that I did. And so I would say things like, the paycheck is more than just the money. The reward is more than just the paycheck. The reward for me is also in the gratitude and the better living situation that I leave behind, and there's a reward in that for me as well. And so I'm not making it in the numbers on the paycheck, but I'm making it in, helping people have a better life. So it sounds to me that's also what you found, but you found it in commercial real estate versus maybe helping somebody find their dream home or whatever. So I'm just curious, you already talked about that just a little bit, but I'm curious if you could maybe parse that out a little bit more for me. How is it that you feel what you're doing in commercial real estate is actually making helping people have a better life?
Yeah, great question. So if I can start off by saying, in my early 20s and maybe late 20s, I used to chase after every job that paid me more, and it was all about the money. And as I grew older and more wiser and more sophisticated, yes, compensation is important, but I think waking up in the morning and being passionate about what you do is even more important. And if you wake up every morning and you're thinking, I'm so motivated to get this client what they need and solve their issues, then that's what drives me. That's what wakes me up in the morning. It's also what keeps me up at night, by the way. But with that being said, if I can share with you two stories of why I think I made an impact on others' lives. The first client that we work with is called Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And they have a big San Francisco presence, and they wanted to expand to the East Bay. And they have this blind workers program. And so they came to us and they said, can you help us find a building? We want to, they actually manufacture for the U.S. government. And so they came to us and they said, can you help us find a space? And we found them a space. And to know that we were able to further their cause by having this warehouse where they can employ 50, 60 people and produce products where soldiers use on the field. They make these little toilet packets, by the way. Wow. Yeah, and they also make broomsticks, right? So I felt like, yes, we were helping our clients, but we're also making an impact on others' lives. Cool. Another story I wanted to talk about is called Nightscope. They're a security robotics company based out of Mountain View. And we worked with them when they were just an incubator. And they soon became very successful, and they went public last year. They're now listed on the NASDAQ. And so what Nightscope does is they provide these robots that patrols, buildings and parking lots. And it's all about security. So when you're going to a mall and you're seeing, people driving by breaking windows, they got this device that can actually record and get people's driver's license and turn that over to the law enforcement and make an impact on our lives, right? Yeah. So I'm very honored to be able to work with companies like them.
I love that. So by giving a company like that a home and helping them get established in a place that's going to optimize what they can do, you feel like that's, it's you're helping the community.
I'm helping the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, that's really cool. So it sounds like you have served in the East Bay a good bit. Mm-hmm. How much work do you do in Fremont proper or the city of Fremont versus like the surrounding areas? Do you do a lot of work in Fremont then?
Yeah, obviously. I live and work in Fremont, by the way.
Okay.
I started the Ivy Group about 22 years ago, right around the time that I moved to Fremont.
And the Ivy Group is the name of your real estate?
That's right, okay. The Ivy Group. We're a Lux company that offers commercial and investment advisory services to our client.
Okay.
We serve clients along the 880 corridor, and we're very good at industrial properties. We spend about 70% of our resources and time with our clients who are looking at Fremont as an opportunity.
That's awesome. Do you have a growing pride for Fremont, or what is it about Fremont that has grown on you since you've lived here?
In the last 20 some odd years, a lot has changed in Fremont. And I think, I have 2 young daughters now. And what I've seen is I'm really impressed with their educational system.
Okay.
A lot of people tell you that, hey, Fremont have good schools, but you really don't know until you experience it. So with that in mind, I think that they got great educational systems. A lot of the clients that we work with in Fremont know that Fremont is about half the price of, let's say, Peninsula, right? Whether you're buying, selling, or leasing. So that's a good draw. Yeah. Fremont also has a great ecosystem where you can have easy access to capital, talent.
Yep.
From an accessibility standpoint, it's relatively easy to get to the Port of Oakland. We are the gateway to Silicon Valley.
Yep.
There's so many things about Fremont that's positive. We have over 65 million square foot of industrial properties, of which 150 plus companies are in the biotech sector. Who would have known, right?
Yeah, right.
So I love Fremont because of all of that. I also love the fact that there's just so many amenities around here that you can take advantage of, right?
Yeah, I love it. I think that Fremont, for me, it's funny because when I moved out here, I was asked to join a friend in moving out here, and I never had anything against California, and I never had anything against the West Coast, but I never had a desire. Like I was not one of those people that was like, I can't wait. My dream is to live in California. And so when I was asked about moving to California, I was like, I don't have any interest in that, But what's interesting is I tell people that when I was offered the opportunity to at least come and check it out, and specifically check out Fremont. And when I did, I fell in love with California because of Fremont. Like, I think that if I'd have been asked to go almost anywhere else, now that I've lived here and been able to see all the different communities, there's probably some other things that would have appealed to me. But there was something special about Fremont that I really loved. The family friendliness. We spent, my son, when we moved here, was about 1.5 at the time. And we spent a number of hours while we were here at Lake Elizabeth Park. And I just remember thinking, this park's amazing. The people that are here are amazing. Like, there's just so many things about the city of Fremont. It is a special place. It's very unique in the Bay Area. So I'm curious, if you imagine the future of Fremont and what you're doing now that might affect the trajectory of where Fremont is headed, what are some of the things that you dream about, or what are some of the things that you might hope to do to make a difference in our community?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, there's so many things, I think the city could do, and the city is doing it proactively to make Fremont a better place. Mm-hmm. By the way, I don't know if you know, but Fremont is voted the #1 place to raise a family in the country.
I just saw that.
In the country.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
It wasn't a one-time award. It's just like 3 years in a row. So there's a lot to be said, right? There's a lot of smart people here. As I mentioned earlier, access to capital. But I mean, personally, I like to see Fremont to be more of a progressive city, meaning that, obviously we need to deal with some of the shortage of housing, right? We need to, do a better job in terms of drawing the right companies and firms to the area. And the city's done a great job, by the way. I served as the Economic Development Commission advisor for a good 11 and a half years before I termed out. So I saw a lot of the reasons why employees and employers want to come here. But we also saw, other companies leaving, and I think the city has a good challenging task ahead. Personally, on the personal side, I like to see we maintain the accessibility to the hiking trails and Lake Elizabeth and things like that, because we're real big on biking on the weekends, with my kids. So, it's a lot of things that are very positive about Fremont, but I think we can always do better.
Yeah. That's interesting. As I'm listening to that, because I think I would say I agree with what you're saying. I'm curious because it is a challenge, I think, because you have a lot of housing going up, but then a lot of the housing takes away some of the, whether it's the hiking space, not necessarily taking away the hiking spaces that we protected, but there are definitely hiking or more outdoor spaces that are special to Fremont. That I'm sure that if you were to ask people, actually I have asked people, like when people who've lived here most of their life, and how they say like where we are right now used to be apricot orchards or whatever, and I'm just I think it's a little tricky to be able to keep the coziness and the outdoorsiness of Fremont, and yet at the same time provide extra housing or more housing down the road. Is there something like, because I don't have an answer for that either, because I definitely want to protect the spaces and the things that I love about the city as well. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are regarding how to balance, housing versus some of those outside spaces.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we have 65 million square foot of industrial space, and the city is very protective of that, right? They understand that, yes, we need more housing, but we also need to protect the industrial spaces for the companies. Yeah. So it's going to take some getting together with the city and the community to get together and formulate a plan. And I think there's got to be some compromise. Our city, even though we have our fair share of challenges, I think we're doing pretty well. Yeah. Our housing plan got approved by the state. Yeah. So that's good. But I think overall, you're starting to see a lot of mixed use development, right? Ground floor retail with some residential upstairs. And they're getting a little bit more dense. And I think one area that could be improved and that could impact, the future is having to relook at this development guideline, right? For example, our client looked at some spaces that are 15,000 square foot, and they wanted to build X number of units. You just couldn't get that on 15,000 square foot because it's in a transit-oriented development zone However, that's how the code's written. So we got to relook at all those things,
Sure.
right? And figure out, maybe you have to take a piece of land on a case-by-case basis and figure out how we can do what we can, given the shortage that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think I've ever thought of that particularly in that way. In that the community is evolving, right? And so an idea or something that was laid down 20 years ago as being a good idea may not necessarily be a good idea anymore. It might actually be that things have changed and we weren't expecting this particular change in our community, but because of it, now we need to adapt and we need to reconsider the use of the space or the use of the area, or one of the things that I was just talking with when we were recording one of the episodes for the Niles podcast. We were just talking about the fact that there are things about even Niles that are very attractive to people, and there's something about Niles that's very, very special, and it would be, in my opinion, it would be a shame to turn it into something that's just standard, Bay Area, standard Bay Area housing or whatever. But at the same time, it can be curated in a way that's something that's special for the community to actually accentuate or to make the experience, the living experience, better for our community. And I think in some sense we need to look at the things that are actually doing well on their own. I think that's where I was going with that. What are the things that are doing well on their own, and we need to allow them to be able to have what they need in order to continue to grow. And then the things that are dying, we need to say, is it worth holding on to those? And if not, then what's going to be a good alternative to helping establish something good and new in that particular area? What do you think about that? What's your response?
Well, if you look at how Fremont, quote unquote, became about, it's from the 5 different communities, right?
Yes.
Every community has its own character, it has its own way of thinking, it has its own demographics, and so to bring that together, and it's been 60 years to call it Fremont, it's a great thing. With that being said, there's still a lot of some of the older voices that are still seeing Fremont as an orchard city, right? But some of the more progressive, younger, people who live here want to see something a little bit more change.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I think we had from the governor down to the city level, ADUs, right? ADUs are approved, so you can build additional units. Right. If you look at what Berkeley's doing, they're starting to get rid of parking requirements. Right, and so I think we have to look really deep and figure out what is it that Fremont wants. Yeah, because every development that you do has some sort of parking requirements, right? Yeah. And maybe you mentioned old ways. Maybe one way to look at that is instead of 3 spaces per 1,000 square foot, can we do 1 per 1,000? Yeah. So you can free up 2 space and do other stuff with it.
That's cool. What do you mentioned running and biking, and what else? What do you do in your spare time? What do you do for fun?
I do a lot. I spend a lot of time with my 2 kids and my wife, by the way. But personally, I do a lot of running.
You ran marathons, you said, right?
I've ran the San Francisco Marathon, and I train really hard for that. Yeah. But I'm more suited for half marathons. Yeah.
I'm more built. I'm built and suited for watching marathons.
So, okay, that's fine. That's okay too. That's where I'm at now. But
I'll watch half marathons too.
I do a lot of running still.
Yeah, that's great.
I would park my car here at the office and do circles around the lake. One of the things that I've done that I'm very proud of is in 2020, when we first had the lockdown because of COVID, I made a pledge to run 1,000 miles in 1 year.
Wow.
And we raised, I ended up running 1,178 miles. We ended up raising money through the Rotary Club of Fremont to benefit the people that were affected by COVID. So
that's really cool.
That was a lot of running.
Yeah.
It's a mindset that you have to put yourself to. Yeah. And like anything else in life, if it's important enough to you, you would carve out time for it.
Totally.
And physically, it was tough.
Yeah.
But I've always had that 1,000 mile for 20 years on my bucket list, and I finally had a chance to do it.
You did it. That's cool. How did, since you brought it up, how did COVID affect real estate for you, or your like what you were doing? I mean, was COVID? I mean, you probably had to adapt or do things differently. What was it like for you to go through COVID and try to maintain what you're doing in real estate?
Yeah, on the one hand, COVID really didn't have a whole lot of impact because I was already out there in the field every day. For me, remote work has always been the norm. And so going out to look at properties, meeting clients wherever they happen to be, that was, nothing's changed there. However, when we first had the lockdown, it was a big shock, right? Yeah, to stay at home for a good 6 months. Yeah. And so there was a lot of change. And so I had the time to go and do other stuff like running, 1,000 miles. But the thing that I learned that was important was we realized this is just a temporary, thing, right? This pandemic shutdown. So we stayed in touch with our clients. Mm-hmm. We provided guidance to them. Yeah. We offered them, services that they didn't think they needed. Mm-hmm. They never talked about, hey, my tenant is about to walk out on me. What do I do, right? Yeah. So we picked up where the clients needed us, and so very quickly in 2021 and even 2022, things came back really fast. And by the way, even though we had a little blip in 2020, 2021 and 2022 were our best years ever.
Wow.
So we look at COVID as an opportunity.
Sure.
Right? You can look at it on both ways. You would get out of the field, or you want to look at it as an opportunity to get more market share. Right? And be a service to your client.
Have you thought about the difference in mindset between somebody who looks at COVID or something like COVID as being the end of the world? And I don't want to be, too hyperbolic with that, but like as being like, everything that I'm used to, everything that is good is going away, versus an opportunity. Like, what is the mindset that you had, or what is the mindset that you've discovered as you look back on that time that made COVID turn into an opportunity versus an obstacle or a challenge or a roadblock?
Yeah. I think initially, like most people, we didn't know what COVID was, right? So we were all a little scared, a little uncertain. But once you figure it out, and the science tells us that, there's a lot of things you can do to prevent it. Get your shots, put your mask on, distance yourself. So once you learn that, then you start to see that as, this is just a temporary thing, right? There's always going to be viruses floating around, right? And so you learn to work with that. And like anything in life, I would say it's not even just COVID, it's anything in life. You fall down, you get back up, right? My daughter's learning to ride a one wheel, and she fell down, and it's okay. It's okay to fall down, get back up. So you got to take these opportunities and turn it into an advantage.
Yeah. Success doesn't really feel successful unless you have failure, right? Unless you have something to compare it to, right?
Yeah, success is a lot of small mistakes that you made. And in fact, the way I like to look at it is it's better to fail faster so you can succeed faster.
I like that. That's awesome. That's good. So I'm going to ask you maybe kind of wrap things up here a little bit, but if you were to get a glimpse 10 years down the road, what do you hope that you might be remembered for? What do you want to do with your life to make a difference in whether it's in family or our community or whatever? What is a dream or a hope that you have for your life that you hope to leave a legacy or to leave a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I like to leave behind is, I'd like to say that I made an impact on my kids' life. And they're growing up in Fremont, so it's important for them and for me to understand that we have to give back to the community, which is why I've served as president of the Rotary Club of Fremont. I've also served 2-term president for Citizens for a Better Community, and I also serve as treasurer for the Ohlone College Foundation. So the little things that you do to give back to community I think it's important. It's a legacy I like to leave behind. It's how you make people feel, how you treat them with respect. A lot of times we're just thinking, it's just a real estate agent, but we try to be more than that. We try to, build and maintain that relationship, maintain that trust, being transparent and being honest with not just your client, but just in general, it's pretty important. Those are our core principles. Those are our core values. So I like to have, one day when I'm gone from this earth, I hope that's the story that people.
The integrity, the honesty and the transparency that you had. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Tim, is there anything else that I need to know about you? You just listed off like 5 different offices that you had that were not even mentioned. Is there anything else that I need to know about? Because I'm sure we could talk for a long time, and I could learn a lot more new things about you. Is there anything else?
This has been a fun podcast.
Yeah,
Thank you for the invitation. Personally,
sure.
I just probably going to take some time off with my family and go to France for a couple of weeks.
Nice.
Yeah. At a professional level, I want to continue to be of service to our client, to offer them excellent service like we've always been. The Ivy Group is currently going through a rebranding strategy to better showcase our experience and our track record. So there's some exciting things that's coming.
That's awesome.
And it's going to be fun. I see myself being in this for a long haul.
Nice.
So, we want to continue to do what we do and have fun doing it and just be happy doing it.
That's great. How big is the Ivy Group?
The Ivy Group has 5 agents.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a Lux company, but we get the job done because we have trusted partners. We have people that we rely on, and we are able to communicate with our clients in 5 different languages.
That's amazing. That's cool.
Very amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how many people would be listening to this that would benefit from your services, but if they wanted to know more about you or more about your services, what would be the best way for them to find out?
Go to our website, ivycommercial.com. You'll find all the projects that we worked on in the past and current projects that we have. The contact information is there, and just feel free to reach out.
That's awesome. Tim, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on here, and I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship down the road. I think it'd be great to stay in contact with you and watch and see what you do with your life. That'd be really cool.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation, Ricky.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
This episode was hosted and produced by Ricky B. I'm Gary Williams. Andrew Cavett is the editor. Rachel Prey is the print editor in charge of our newsletter. Scheduling and pre-interviews by Sarah S. Additional reporting by Mark Emmons. Music provided by Soundstripe.com. You can find everything we make, the podcast, our newsletter, and all of our social media links at thefremontpodcast.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you would, please leave a review on iTunes. Your reviews help other people find this podcast. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.
This is a Muggins Media Podcast.